Hi, in this module, we're going to talk about how to build your annual sales plan. You see, I believe too many salespeople start the year with goals, dreams, or hopes, but they don't have an ability in writing to measure their progress towards the achievement of those goals. This presentation is going to show you how to take control of the 5 vital metrics that are associated with the new math of sales excellence, translate those into weekly activities, and then hold yourself accountable for pursuing your goals. You see, the nicest thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise and is not preceded by a period of worry and depression. John Preston said that, and man, I'm telling you, there's a lot of truth in that short statement. This sales force didn't need to plan. This is the first telephone sales force in Los Angeles, California. You can see their entire marketing effort is displayed on that sign. Have you a telephone in your home? You see, when you don't have competition, when you're bringing something totally new, literally a ground-changing event or program or product to the market, you don't need to have a plan. Just go out and tell people about it. But if you're like most sales professionals in the 21st century, you have competition, you have products and services that are very similar, perhaps identical to yours, and I want you to have a written document, a flight plan, if you will, that will guide you through your next 12 months, perhaps your next 3 years, but make sure you always answer the most important question, which is, what's in it for me? If you're following a plan that you wrote, then your plan should take you to your goals. I'm going to show you how to build your metrics, assign metric thresholds, and most importantly, understand your plan must be in writing. If you've studied the new math of sales excellence, then you understand that there are 5 steps to success. You must control these 5 activities. You must increase the number of first meetings. You must shorten the sales cycle. You must increase your selling prices, stop discounting in other words, increase the amount of time you spend selling, and increase your conversion ratios of leads to first meetings to quotes, etc. If you focus on these 5 metrics and move them up just 5% each during the course of the next 12 months, then in the aggregate, your sales will go up by 36%. That's just math. I'm going to show you more about that in the course called The New Math of Sales Excellence. If you haven't taken that course, navigate over there as soon as you're done with this and take that course, and you'll understand how to improve these 5 things. But it's always about the funnel. That never changes. You and or your marketing department have to do something to gain awareness on the part of qualified prospects. That's going to require interrupting them, engaging them, educating them, and then moving to the next step, which would be your first meetings. You're going to have to manage the appropriate number of opportunities and dollar value of those opportunities through your funnel. Remember, moving each up by just 5% will produce a tremendous improvement for you. Your sales plan must be in writing. A plan that's not in writing is nothing more than elaborate hopes and wishes. It must contain dates, timetables, and accountabilities, and it must have activity metrics. In other words, I don't want you to say, next year I'm going to sell a lot harder than I did last year. You see, that infers that you were pretty lazy last year. And I hate the phrase, I'm going to sell smarter, because that assumes that you weren't very bright last year. Let's make sure that we focus on what we're going to do next week and every week thereafter to improve our production and gain the goals that we want to achieve. Your next plan for the next 12 months must be based on your understanding mathematically of last year's results. And I'm not just talking about dollar results. I'm talking about the activities that produce those dollars. Your plan must be designed to increase your marketing footprint. More about that later in this presentation. And I implore you to evaluate your plan every 60 days. You see, we pilots always have a flight plan when we go flying. I want you to have a flight plan to navigate from the beginning of your sales year to the end of your sales year profitably and successfully. Let me ask you a few questions before we really do a deep dive. Why should a stranger engage with you during a sales presentation? What value does a stranger get out of meeting with you? What results does you and your company produce for others? And how do your customers value those results? Now, there's a phrase that you probably didn't learn in business school, but it's something that I'm passionate about, which is the consideration rate. What is your current consideration rate? In other words, what percent of all the desirable opportunities that are closing this month in your market have considered you? If only 10% of the decisions have considered you, then you can only win 10% of the deals. If 80% consider you, then your sales will go up without any increase in proficiency, without any increase in your skill, by a factor of 8. So let's focus on the one thing that you can absolutely empirically control, which is your consideration rate. I want your plan to be divided into the audience segments that most salespeople have to deal with. You have your current first-time buyers. In other words, these are companies that are looking to buy for the first time a product or service from your company or from someone who offers an identical solution. That represents about 3% of the market. 97% of the market are what I refer to as future buyers. They will buy at some point in the future from somebody. Another slice of your market could be the active customers. These are the people that are actively buying from you right now. They're in your accounting system. You know who they are. They know who you are. The inactive customers are the people that used to buy from you and terminated their relationship and started buying from someone else. And then there's that group of customers that asked you for quotes, proposals, demonstration trials, what have you, but they didn't buy. These people are in the segment for lost sale. Make sure your plan is designed to get in touch and stay in touch with the appropriate message for each of these segments. If you're not prospecting for first-time buyers, your sales will go flat. You have to nurture future buyers. You have to retain existing customers, wake up or resurrect inactive customers, and get back to the lost sales. Your plan must cover all 5 segments. As you're building your plan, make sure you lay out your goals. First and foremost, what do you want to achieve this month or this quarter? Secondly, what do you have to do to achieve those goals? What resources do you need from management to be able to accomplish your task? And how are you going to evaluate your effort at the end of the month, quarter, or year? You should also incorporate strategies that you know have worked. What has worked in the past? And depending on what you sell, there could be a long laundry list of different strategies: networking, lunch and learns, demonstrations, emails, cold calls, seminars, webinars, trade shows, you name it. There's a ton of strategies, but all of them aren't perfect, and all of them aren't ideal for your situation. I'm sure you've tried some in the past that just flat didn't work. Well, let's not duplicate that mistake. Find out what's working with other people in your team, your company, or your industry, and implement some of those strategies. And make sure that they're working well enough to give you an adequate ROE. You'll hear me talk about ROE throughout our program. It stands for return on effort. Salespeople essentially are involved in an investment game every day of the working week. We invest our time to recruit commissions, bonuses, salaries, etc. If your ROE, return on effort's too low, then you're selling to people who can't buy, won't buy, or worse, shouldn't buy. Data tells us that to get all of the customers in your current and future market aware of your value proposition, you need to touch them at least 6 to 8 times. I've actually seen some studies, one recently done at MIT, that said you need to touch them 15 times. Regardless of the number, the salesperson who does one touch and goes away is the salesperson that will never achieve his or her goals. These passes should be pretty concentrated, and you should be prepared to hit all of the names in your database in a 10-day period of time. You should respond to any and all alerts that come your way. This would be a customer responding to an email, for instance, or a customer who comes to your website and says, send me some information. Those alerts are coming from the current buyers. The future buyers, the 97%, may seem like they're not interested. Don't ignore them. Touch them every month. You see, studies have shown that salespeople who give up too soon are, without exception, poor performers. This chart comes from a study that was done by the Dartnell Sales Institute. They showed that 50% of salespeople abandon their effort to pursue a new account after one attempt. 90% give up after 4 attempts. But you see, the average customer, especially in today's very crowded marketplace, is waiting for the 8th, 9th, 10th, sometimes the 12th or 15th touch before they're ready to buy. So make sure that part of your plan has a facility in the plan for you to nurture all of the desirable, demographically desirable contacts who indicate a desire to postpone engaging in a purchasing discussion. These are the men and women that have said wait in one form or another. Now, a moment or two ago, I talked about intense prospecting. This gentleman is a professor at MIT that did a study for InfoUSA regarding how leads can be generated and handled. His study was candidly pretty shocking, but he said you must touch every lead that comes your way 8 to 12 times over a 14-day period, or as they said on the TV shows, forget about it. You should employ a multi-channel approach of touching these leads, phone calls, emails, postcards, drop-bys, you name it. But multi-channel is appropriate, and if you stop and think about it, it makes a ton of sense when you realize that the average stranger doesn't tell you how they want to receive information. So I intend to touch people with all of the above, because you never know which touch is the best touch until that customer is ready to engage and go through the buying process with you. This spells a loud and clear need for automation, and too often, too few of us are utilizing automation tools that are very inexpensive, very productive to their maximum capacity. Too many 21st century salespeople are selling in a manner that was taught traditionally in the 20th century. Think about it. What else do we do in a 20th century mode here in the 21st century? Not much that I can think of. You see, your plan has to cover the number one sales problem. At the end of the day, the salesperson who isn't involved with an influencer or decision maker when they want to buy is the salesperson who can't sell them. So when you look at all the men and women in your geography and all of the decisions that are going to be made in the next 12 months, and all those men and women making those decisions, how many of them know you? You see, the secret sauce is to build a plan to make sure that all the customers know you as an individual and know your company as an organization. So I like to say the number one goal of any salesperson's sales plan should be to get in touch and stay in touch with all of the decision makers and all of the influencers in all of the accounts all of the time. And I know I'm being repetitiously redundant, but I want to make sure that you get the message. Get in touch and stay in touch with everybody, and most of your revenue and profit production challenges will disappear. The secret sauce is making sure that you and your team are at this magical intersection when the customers are also at that intersection. You see, I found that I can have all the trust in the world between myself and a customer. They can trust me like a brother. But if the timing is not right for them to change vendors, change processes, change products, it doesn't matter that I have that trust. Conversely, if the timing's right, but they don't trust me, then I can't sell them. So your goal, hence the phrase, get in touch We can control getting in touch. We can control staying in touch, but we can't control creating the right timing. So if you get in touch and stay in touch, odds are you'll get an opportunity to compete when they're ready to buy. You see, it's not how many people you know, it's how many people know you. That's the important metric. And I like to say someone that knows you would be a business relationship that will pick up the phone and call you when they need a product or service like that which you sell. How many people fit that description? Your recap of last year should start with a SWOT analysis. What are our strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities exist? And what threats exist to you and or your team? Compared to your goals from last year, what percent were achieved? Did you get 80% of your goals, 100%, 110%? Why did you achieve at the level that you met? Was it poor performance? Was it one more call a day? Was it market conditions? What do you really think caused you to underperform or overperform? I want you to know the answer to that. I want you to be able to correlate your activities to results. In other words, can you mathematically say if you had issued 10 more proposals last year, your revenue would have gone up by X dollars? If you can't do that, that's okay. That means you're managing yourself the way we taught salespeople back in the 20th century. Let's come into the 21st century and start correlating today's activities to tomorrow's results. As I said earlier, which tactics worked, which ones didn't work, and if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently next year versus last year? Now, I talked about consideration rate a moment or two ago, and another way of phrasing that is, what's your marketing footprint? Your marketing footprint is a mathematical calculation of the number of men and women in your marketplace that are demographically desirable. In other words, they're capable of making a decision or influencing a decision to buy your product or service. If you don't know the answer to that, call any list broker and ask them to give you a count. The term that industry uses is a count of those people. They'll do this for you for free. Once you know the number of demographically desirable decision makers and influencers, you need to understand how often you're touching them. Now, frequently, this little exercise is shocking to many salespeople because we get into the groove of feeling like we know everybody or virtually everybody of any importance in our marketplace. You know, we have a pile of business cards on our desk. We have a CRM system with hundreds of names in it. But suppose you get a count that says that there are 18,443 people in your market that are demographically desirable, and you only have 400 names in your database. Well, congratulations, you have a huge upside opportunity. The other component of the equation for calculating consideration rate is how often are you touching those people. The books say that we need to touch a stranger at least once every month to maintain top-of-mind awareness. So you should be prepared, and here's where automation comes in. You should be prepared to touch your entire database at least once a month. Now make sure these touches are educational and they're not sales pitches. Now this will create a large footprint, and the larger your footprint, the better your consideration rate, and the better your consideration rate, the more revenue you'll produce during the course of the next year. Now, some of the metrics that I'd like you to review from last year, and I need to tell you, it's okay if you don't have these numbers on the tip of your tongue. But how many names did you add to the database last year? How many marketing events did you attend? Chamber of Commerce, trade shows, any seminars, educational events? How many presentations did you give last year? How many first meetings did you conduct or attend with new desirable prospects? How many touches did you launch last year? That would include phone calls, emails, postcards, flyers. How many touches did you launch? How many people visited your website? And what are your trends for those issues? If you can't answer these, unfortunately, that makes you normal. But if you follow the advice I'm sharing with you in this presentation, 1 year from now, you'll have these numbers on the tip of your tongue. Now, more important than that, you'll have more cash in your pocket and you'll have a whole lot less stress. You see, stress comes from not knowing the metrics that produce results. Sales is a numbers game. It always has been. It's just not the same numbers that I learned way back in 1970 as a rookie at IBM to achieve my goals. But I want you to be cognizant of your year-end shortfall. This is a very simple calculation where you project your year-end situation vis-a-vis your goals based on your year-to-date performance. In other words, if you consider that you will continue to perform in the fashion that you have so far this year, at the end of the year, will you be 100%, 110, 50%? Where will you be? Make sure you know those metrics, and as you go into next year, put yourself on a disciplined program to understand the number of new activities you need to meet your goal. The first metric that you must consider is how many new transactions are needed. This could be a new account or a new product line or a new order, but new is the operative phrase. In order to get that number of new transactions based on your personal history, how many quotes or proposals do you need to issue? Based on your personal history, how many first meetings do you need to attend to deliver that number of quotes and or proposals? How many cold emails and or cold calls or visits or web inquiries do you need to have in order to make that number of first meetings that you need to make to be able to hit your goal? Now, this is going to require a little bit of scientific conjecture, but in order to have a benchmark, let's get something down in writing, and then we can translate that into the number of first meetings you need to attend next year. You see, it's always about the first meetings. More important than next year, how many first meetings do you need to attend next week? If you're consistently meeting your first meeting goal, you can pretty much bet that your year-end projection will be exactly where you want it to be. I want you to use a concept called SMART planning. SMART is an acronym. It stands for being specific. Don't say things like, I need a lot of first meetings. I want you to be able to say, you need to conduct 10 first meetings monthly. That's specific. It's clearly measurable. The second part of the acronym. Is it achievable? Only you can tell me that. But make sure your goals are achievable. Don't set a goal, hypothetically, of 500 first meetings in a month, because that's not an achievable goal, and you're going to make yourself crazy, and you're actually working against your best interests. Make sure it's achievable and realistic, and last but certainly not least, make it a timely goal. This will be able to be translated into metrics that you can measure every Friday night. You see, the best sales professionals understand what they need to do every week in order to hit their targets. The worst, on the other hand, just keep working harder and harder and harder. And they're like the proverbial squirrel in the squirrel cage. Now, that consideration rate is the missing metric in most sales forces. I want you to get to the point of trying to achieve a 100% consideration rate. Now, you'll never get there, but the closer you get, the more predictable and profitable your sales efforts will be. You see, 100% consideration rate literally means that you'll be considered by 100% of the decision makers when they're making a decision to buy. Multi-channel is the best way for you to get the word out, and please employ automation. You can't sell in the 21st century like you did in the 20th century and hope to achieve the same level of success. No one's going to pick up the phone and call a stranger today when there's so many marketing messages hitting the decision makers from all of your competitors all of the time. Every prospect's going to judge you in the first few seconds, and that prospect's going to say, what's in it for me? Can you help me with a problem I have? Who else can make the claims you just made? Are your services proven? Is your support provable? Will you help me make money or save money? Or can you help me gain more references? All of these things are critical. You have to learn how to write a market dominating position and use that phrase or those sentences in your elevator speech, on your website, literally everything that you present to your customers. You really should have a seductive, legitimate bribe. A white paper, a planning guide, a video are all legitimate bribes. In other words, you're giving a lot of value for very little or no cost. You should be able to define your value propositions and broadcast them consistently. And believe it or not, I believe salespeople should work from pre-written scripts that they've practiced and rehearsed so that every performance is flawless. Remember, the judge is looking at you, the customer is judging you, and you have about 10 to 15 seconds to answer the question, what's in it for me? That's why I advocate everyone having an elevator speech that's clear and it communicates the beneficial results that you produce. It's easy to communicate, it's easier to understand, and try to focus on things that you improve. We fix overtime problems, we eliminate payroll mistakes, we improve productivity. These are phrases the prospects will recognize and the prospects will appreciate and bond with. Now, your plan must take a look at a whole laundry list of activities. Now, one of the good news, bad news things about the 21st century is salespeople have many ways to get the word out and keep it out. You should try to explore as many of these are viable for you. Social media, networking, remarketing, trade shows, website referrals, pay-per-click advertising, autoresponder. You should also make sure your CRM system will send out emails for you in a campaign structure. I call that contact nurturing. It is also referred to as closed loop marketing, incorporating cold calls over the phone. If you're going to use the phone, make sure you have some sort of a power dialer associated with your phone. It will make you about 400% more productive. LinkedIn, Facebook, and blogging are all ways that salespeople can promote themselves. I think you need to have a LinkedIn profile. It's mandatory in my world. Same with a Facebook page. Your company should have one, and you should have one. You should track and trend the number of contacts and keep in mind at all times the overarching message that I share, which is it's how many people know you that's important, not how many people you know. Start LinkedIn groups. I don't know if you're very familiar with LinkedIn, but if you're not, you should do a deep dive into that real fast. You should either start a group or join all the groups that make sense. But this is where your prospects hang out, and what better place for you to be than where they are. Networking events are very valuable if and only if you follow up immediately on all the cards you get. Don't go to one of the events where everyone is waiting for someone to sell something for them. Go to an event to offer your assistance to help other professionals achieve their goals. You'll be amazed at how the results you produce change when your orientation changes. Now, I talked about closed loop marketing, and this is something many CRM systems will do for you. But it's a concept that was invented by a car salesman back in the 1960s. And he did what I'm about to explain manually, but let me tell you about his sales results first. In 1965, he set the sales record that still stands in the Guinness Book of World Records for the number of new cars sold in 1 year from a retail dealership. He closed 8 new cars per day for 365 consecutive days. His name is Joe Girard. He wrote a book that you can buy called How to Sell Anything to Anybody, but the heart of his system was everybody that left the dealership and did not buy from him got a postcard from him every month. In other words, he was building an inferred debt so that when that prospect was legitimately ready to buy a car, Joe got a shot. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? Give me a shot. And this is called closed loop marketing or nurture marketing. It's something an individual salespeople should do. But everybody in your universe should get a message from you every month based on which segment of your universe they're in. But regular communications demonstrates your value, demonstrates your capability, and it makes you look like a partner, not a peddler. Make sure the communications are all aimed at helping your prospects move their business forward. I love cold emailing as a way to get into a new account. It's called appropriate person emailing. And I've developed campaigns for new customers, for referral generation, for retaining existing customers, for following up on lost sales, for those customers who have told me to wait, and those customers that are in an inactive mode that I want to wake up. But by offering all of these campaigns to my marketplace, I make my footprint much larger than any of my peers. And at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. Obviously, cold calling in the old-fashioned drop-in canvassing mode is much more challenging today than it was back in the early days of my career, but it still can work. I do want you to make cold calls using a power dialer. These are very inexpensive pieces of software that really amp up the volume and capacity of your cold calling. It lets you be 3 or 4 times more effective, so you can get a day's worth of cold calling done in a 2-hour block of time. Always make scripts as part of your program. Write blogs that educate your market and will help you create a community, and it differentiates you from all the peddlers that are trying to get business from the same market that you're going after. By writing a blog, you're showing yourself to be more professional and more willing to help. And I'm amazed at the people that become my customers as a result of being a subscriber to my blog. Now, autoresponders are also part of many CRM systems, but this is a piece of technology that will automatically send out an email to someone over your signature who responds to an email that you send out or that comes to your website, etc. Make sure that you ask every customer for referrals. I utilize my technology to send emails asking customers to refer me to new people. Now, we've talked a lot in today's presentation about how to get new customers, but I want to spend a few moments on the very important task of keeping those customers. Keep in mind, it's 8 times more expensive. It takes 8 times as much work to replace a customer that left you than it does to have that customer stay with you. I call it top-to-top marketing, and we want to approach the highest level in the account that we can get to with a message of trying to understand where they want to go. Don't give them a pitch, but position yourself as a partner who wants to help them achieve their goal. Stack rank your accounts from the best to the worst so that you can make sure you're investing your time where you'll get maximum ROE, return on effort. You see, I believe that the potential in any territory declines always because of things that are beyond your control. Take a look at the sliding graph on this particular image. The key contact resigns, so the potential may go down in that account and therefore in the territory. A competitor may introduce a new product. Again, that reduces the potential. A large account moves out. A local customer closes. Or one of your customers comes up with specs you can't meet. All of those things reduce your potential. And the reason I point that out is not to be negative, but to make you aware that you should be in a mode of constant territorial replenishment. Let's make sure we're getting new blood into our account list at all times. You see, your good customers are leaving. Some studies show that every 2.4 years, the decision-making matrix, on average, in the accounts that decided to bring you into the account has changed. People have gotten promoted, resigned, what have you. That's why it's important to have top-to-top messaging. And every 90 days, we should sit down with those accounts for a strategic business review. Don't try to pitch anything, but sit down and say, here's where we've been in the past 90 days. Where are you going? Let me make sure I align my company's resources to help you achieve your goals. When you go to those meetings, try to bring new ideas, new tools, new products, new ways to solve old problems. I want the men and women at your existing accounts to view you as an asset, not as a pain in the you-know-what. Develop your own self-marketing system. A lot of companies don't have the marketing in place that salespeople need. So there's nothing keeping you from doing your own e-newsletters. There are some softwares that are free, but you can do postcards, flyers, organize lunch and learns. There's no shortage of the ways in which you can market yourself. The key is getting in touch and staying in touch. Now, I've covered a lot of ground, but I'd like you to, as soon as we're done, grab a piece of yellow paper and start writing your plan. Who are the men and women on your team that you need to make sure are working in alignment with you? What are the tasks that need to be done every day, week, month, or quarter to hit your goal? Make sure you use the SMART approach: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Be very specific, avoid generalities, and plug these tasks into your calendar. So we're going to make X number of first meetings per month, and that should be plugged in. And then review your plan every month with yourself and your peers if that's appropriate. Your plan must be designed to touch all demographically desirable accounts 12 times in 12 months. You should shoot for obtaining and maintaining top-of-mind awareness. You should practice weekly, track your metrics. Are you gaining ground or losing ground? Always compare your plan on a plus-minus basis. Are we ahead of where we want to go or behind? Review it monthly and use a win-loss postpone process to understand why you win, why you lose. Track and trend all of the metrics. How many names are you adding to the database? What's your social media activity look like? How many first meetings are you attending? And a first meeting can happen on the phone or face-to-face, but it should be a first encounter with a decision maker or an influencer. How many dollars per quote are you putting out? How much selling time do you have? And what's the length of your sales cycle? Your plan should also have a narrative to explain how you'll shorten your sales cycle, increase the dollars per transaction, what your plan is to retain and nurture and grow your existing accounts, what's your plan to increase the amount of time you spend selling, to generate more leads, how many leads will you actually need, and what are your weekly benchmarks? Well, as we say here in Hollywood, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks so much for your time. Good luck and good selling. You can reach me at area code 310-447-4102 or at Gil, G-I-L, at gilcargill.com. Have a great day and go sell somebody something.